The next 3 years are pivotal for Florida State athletics to maximize the chances for the best contract from the Big 10 and SEC.
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into Locked On Seminoles. I am your host, Brian Smith, longtime college football writer and recruiting analyst. Thank you for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every day. Truly appreciate you stopping in to talk some Noles with me. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $200 in bonus bets when you come up with a win with your first $5 bet. Today's show is a fun one, but one that is also vital to Florida State athletics long term. In a lot of ways, this is the most important show I will do this year or next year. Florida State must maximize its opportunities financially, in terms of social media, NIL, coaching, administration, everything in the next 3 years to gain the best possible bidding war that you can get between the Big 10 and the SEC. We all know Florida State is going to lead the ACC. It's a matter of who, what, when, where, and why. But how do you get there? You maximize your opportunities with everything. It's not just football winning. It's not just basketball getting going with Luke Louts. It's about everything being at a very high level. Right now, Florida State's trending in a better direction, but it still has a long way to go. And I want to go through my personal opinion on it. And please, comment down below. Make your thoughts known. If you have a question, if you think I should expand on it, fire away. I'm happy to discuss those points as well. And if you think I'm wrong on something, by all means, call me out on it. I will be more than happy to reply. So with that being stated, when I say maximize their opportunities, here are some of the barometers that I'm talking about. Yeah, you want to win football games, you want to win basketball games, all that. But I'm talking about how you treat boosters, how you get the NIL collectives to work the best with the people that are not just on campus, not just the 7-on-7 coaches, not just recruits, everyone. Florida State has got, in my opinion, about a 3-year window. Because while the 2026 season will see Florida State have a chance, if they want, to buy out of the grant of rights and all that for the ACC, it's still pretty hefty. Personally, I don't think that's going to happen. 2030 is more likely. That's the next chance. It's under $100 million. Maybe that's the year you do it. With that being stated, for the rest of this show, I'm just going to throw it out there. That is what I'm basing this on. 2030, not 2026, just to be clear. So by 2027, at the end of that season for football, and then, basketball is getting going, the ACC is going to know they're losing Florida State. But it also means that the market, and it's really a two-team race here, the Big Ten Conference and the SEC. At the very least, the objective is to have them bid on you or want you so that you have a leg up financially, just like the $20 million, give or take, that Florida State's going to get more per year with a new deal. With the ACC, you want to get the best possible deal. You want it to be about eyeballs on TV, because even in the Big Ten, let's use them for an example, Florida State going into it, Penn State, Wisconsin, Michigan State, Illinois, these are big state schools with massive alumni. They do good numbers. Doesn't matter which school you pick. Even some of them that aren't that great. They can do pretty good numbers. You still want to be at the upper echelon, because I think, based on Florida State and Clemson getting the deal done against the ACC, I think the Big Ten, just as an example again, is going to go to that model too. Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan, probably going to benefit the most. You want to be in that tier. To get into that tier, you've got to maximize everything, not just football, not just basketball. It's everything you do, your social media, how you handle the administration, all the things you put in, all the stuff. Fortunately, with Doak Campbell Stadium, it's already underway and almost done. It's supposed to be ready for the Alabama game. Every little detail is going to be looked at for you to get into that. And if Florida State were to join the Big Ten and be in that top tier, your ability to dig into the coffers for coaching moves, for NIL, for better personnel, to keep a coach, anything you want is just expanded. More money, more wins. So here are the things that I want to talk about the most. And what are your expectations as fans? If you have something about that you want to comment about, fire away. But I have a few basic thoughts here that I want to go over, and then I'll expand a little bit more when I talk about Norvell, Laux, and some of the other people that are involved with Florida State athletics at the forefront. Number one, everybody has to be held to an elite standard. Athletic director, trainers, everything. Each and every part of the Florida State athletic department is going to be evaluated. It starts with football and basketball, though. So that's where I'm going to focus. If you have anybody in the back office that isn't an elite person, you have to look at that. Not like they're your friend. You have to hire the best people. You have to push forward. The next 2-3 years is how the Big Ten and the ACC and the SEC and all these schools are going to make runs at trying to get to different conferences. There'll be a Big 12 school that ends up in the ACC. There'll be a Big 10 team that gets kicked out. Florida State, in my opinion, will end up in the Big 10. Everybody's evaluating everybody else's conference membership. Everybody. The ACC is looking for schools. They know Florida State and Clemson. Everybody's evaluating. So each person has to be evaluated. To that point, I think, let's just use Florida State football as an example, major upgrades with the coaching staff. That's great. But now you got to maximize it. Coach Cooper, DB coach, did really well in Nebraska. That's his last stop. Now he has to prove that in Florida. He's a South Florida guy. I'm sure he's thrilled to be back in his home state, getting to recruit more local, probably a lot easier too than it is in Nebraska. How does he help push the pile forward? And then every other person as well. The roster for Florida State football, we all know that's the engine that drives the bus here. I get it. And it will be for the Big Ten and the SEC as well. If it's doing well, you bring in money to help the other sports, which also pushes the pile forward. Again, your goal is to get into that Michigan, Penn State, Ohio State group that I totally expect everybody, and I guess every conference will go to this sooner or later, that Florida State and Clemson just helped create in the ACC. It's going to be about revenue based on eyeballs from TV. Florida State should be there. But if they fall off again this year, what I'm thinking is going to happen, and I'm wrong, boy, that's going to be bad for Florida State. Maybe there's 3 tiers. Maybe there's a middle tier. If Florida State doesn't get into that, you must start winning big very soon. Like this season, they should go to a bowl game, but really in 26, they got to be at least a 9-win team conservatively in 2026. And that's a long way from now, and they're going to have a lot of turnover and all that, but they're going to be graded on it, fair or not. Now let's use this from a basketball perspective. That's your second biggest moneymaker. Luke's got a big task ahead of him, and he didn't deny that during his press conference. Basketball is a big part of it. What if the Big Ten were to make an offer to North Carolina and they want to bring somebody along with them? They'd still love to get a footprint in the state of Florida. That's no secret. The Big Ten really wants one. North Carolina and Florida State headed to the Big Ten, I could see that. But it's got to at least be in part, not. I don't care if Florida State goes 10-2 in 2026. Basketball must step up. Recruiting must be on a higher plane, much higher than what it's been lately under Coach Hamilton. And, he did a great job overall at Florida State, but at the end, things didn't go where they needed to. Luke has talked about how he builds the roster, both from the portal and from high school. We need to see that really, really quick. He might have a harder task in some ways than Norvell. I'm not sure, but man, basketball is so volatile with its rosters. Now, when we talk about it administratively, this is where it gets really crazy. Getting talent's one thing. You got your strength and conditioning program. They've got to be evaluated at all sports. And you also have your back office recruiting staff, administrative staff to make sure everything's NCAA compliant and everything else. Every single I must be dotted, T must be crossed. Everything has to be perfect. Now, I know you strive for that anyway, but there has to be more accountability, and people will have to be brought in if it's not being done that way, because the next 3 years are going to change Florida State athletics potentially for 30 or 40 years. That's really where we're at. Florida State needs to look its best on the field, but all the stuff that we don't get to see as the public and media in the back office, that's what the Big Ten and the SEC are going to want to know about too. They want to make sure there's no skeletons of any kind, and they want to make sure you're maximizing. So when they bring you into the league, whatever tier you're in for the TV contract and all that, they can put value on it. They can see why they're doing it. If you don't, it's probably not going to work out too well for you. When we come back, we're going to continue on with this discussion, talking about the playoffs. Can Florida State make a playoff in the next 2 or 3 years? That's something we're going to talk about next here on Locked On Seminoles. We're all about the stats because numbers do not lie. And when it comes to the all-new Nissan Armada Pro 4X, the numbers are on an MVP level. With the ability to tow up to 8,500 pounds, it can quite literally carry the whole team, plus the gear, wherever you need to go. It's powered by a twin-turbo V6 engine, delivering the strength and performance to handle highways, back roads, and everything in between. And with room for up to 8 people, the Armada Pro 4X is built for big crews, big adventures, and even bigger memories. Whether you're exploring off-road trails or rolling up to the arena, the Armada Pro 4X brings power, versatility, and style wherever you go. Take your adventures to new heights in the all-new Nissan Armada Pro 4X. Learn more at nissanusa.com. This show is also brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets. Win your first $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets to use on everything from buzzer beaters, Cinderella stories, and even who's cutting down the nets. For me, it's the underdogs. This is something I'm big on each and every year. There's usually a team that I really like. I personally prefer the teams that are excellent three-point shooting teams, but maybe it's a defensive squad for you. Picking the underdogs is a lot of fun in the NCAA tournament, but whatever it is, FanDuel will let you get there. So visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. Can Florida State make the playoffs in the next 3 years? Of course they can. It's happened over and over again where you see teams go from not very good at all to a team that just magically, it seems, although it's not really, ends up being great the next. Arizona State won 3 games in 2023. Three. They won 3 games. With the transfer portal and influx of new coaches, anything is possible. Florida State, I don't expect to be that team this year, but maybe in year 2 of this new coaching staff, I could see it. And why? Because there's just so much talent coming in, and it's incredible to even try to put it into perspective how fast you can change your roster. Like in 2 years' time, you might change 70 players. It's crazy to think that. But most kids transfer nowadays, about half conservatively out of these recruiting classes transfer. There's some schools, it's 60, 70%. Quarterback position is definitely 60%. So yes, Florida State could make the playoff. What other things could they do to maximize their chances of catching the attention of the SEC and Big Ten? They have to at least be that team that's knocking on the door. In my favorite subject, you already know what I'm going to say when I bring up my favorite subject. Florida State recruiting has to go to another level. Now, I previewed some of that yesterday talking about D-line, and I feel good about where they're at with the defensive line recruiting. I think they've turned the corner, and they should be in a pretty balanced position moving forward. That's huge. But now you need to be in that kind of situation. This is the big bugaboo for everybody. Offensive line. What about the basketball team? Is it point guard? Is it center? Whatever. Every team has something different in Florida State athletics. That's all got to happen. You need better recruiting across the board at Florida State. And again, you got another $20 million you're going to be looking forward to, give or take, each year moving forward based on the new ACC settlement. They should be dumping some of that money into the coffers for recruiting. That's going to be a major factor for the Big Ten and really any conference. They're going to, I don't care if it's the Big 12, we're going to take a G5 team. They're going to want to know, can you really make this step? Can you be consistent in our league? Recruiting is one of the easiest barometers to look at because they're going to look at those rankings. They're going to go look at a practice, send somebody over, a scout that's in the NFL that played at a Big 10 school, somebody in the Big 10 office. They may not say if this is how this stuff works. They're going to talk to them. Hey, you were at practice. What'd you think? Is this somebody that can compete with Michigan? Can they compete with Ohio State? Can they compete with Penn State? What's the deal? Is Florida State back up to being Florida State again? I think those are major factors. And then finally, this is one of those things in general that you can put it in any perspective you want. Is there stability throughout the program? Meaning, is there no hole? Is there no area in the major sports in particular? Again, basketball, football, they're the most important, with the latter one truly driving the bus. Is there no hole? You can't be in 2027. I hate to broach this subject, but it's just true. There can be zero cloud in 2027 about Mike Norvell. He's either in or he's out. That is reality. If you have an iffy coaching situation, you could still get into the Big 10 or SEC. I'm not saying you cannot, but you will not maximize your opportunities financially to get into that top tier with the TV money if you go to one of those leagues. Because again, to reiterate, I completely expect the model that Florida State and Clemson, ironically, have basically created here, and it's going to continue to move forward. It'll spawn into something different. But Florida State, they want to be in that top tier. If you're in 2027 and it's game 6 and you're 3-3 and just lost by 3 touchdowns to one of your rivals in the Atlantic Coast Conference, that's not a good time to negotiate. But that's about the time those backdoor deals really start getting going. And it could even be sooner. It could be 2026. They might announce a deal. Who knows? I don't trust anything with lawyers and all that stuff in back rooms anyway, but they're going to start barometering this from a perspective of, hey, this is where we project Florida State. This is where we project Clemson. This is where we project Miami. Maybe Texas Tech wants to go into the ACC, whatever. All these leagues are going to be moving around. Florida State has to have its, not just one or the other, both of its major sports, football and basketball, must be perennial contenders in the league. NCAA tournament for hoops, and football has to conservatively be knocking on the door for the playoff. Like going into the final weekend, they're 9-2 trying to get into the ACC title game. If you're in that spot in 2027, you'd be in pretty good situation going into that. It's always Florida at the end of the year. You would be in a good spot. But if Mike Norvell is still on the teeter-totter hot seat in 2027, it is going to really crater the opportunities for Florida State to maximize its contract with the Big 10 or SEC. That is my biggest concern. There is one other caveat that I want to discuss. Fan support. I don't know what's going to happen this year because I've never seen a season like they had last year at Florida State, and fans towards the end of the year where they were done, and I get it. But what will not just what the numbers are, what will the support, just like how loud will Doak be for the Bama game? How crazy will it be if they don't start the season good? I mean, they got brand new offense, brand new defense. It's hard to say what's going to happen. This year is really, really hard to project. If they're 3-4 in the middle of the season, will the fans bail? Because fair or not, the Big 10 and the SEC are going to look at that too. Everything you do will be measured. Everything that you do will be held against you. And I know that Norvell and his staff are responsible for that. Luke Laux will be responsible for that. Every coach on campus will be. But those two that I mentioned first, football, basketball, that's where the money is. That's 90+% of the cash comes from those two sports. At most schools, I highly doubt it's any different in Florida State. They have to find a way to get through this year. I'm hoping it starts pretty good. We just, again, we don't know. I'm projecting 7-5 for Florida State. If you got a comment about that, fire away. But those are some of the things that I really think are really interesting. And I'm curious if Florida State is able to maximize their chances. If they can get through this year, they should be okay. This season is the one that I have the most concern about. I don't know. When I come back, I have a few questions for you as Florida State fans. I'm curious what you think are the biggest concerns. I want you to answer these questions, make some comments, and nothing else. Just think about them as big box. That is next here on Locked On Seminoles. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, entertainment, it's easy to lose track of your money, and that's where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. Surprisingly, this isn't as hard as you think, but it's also something you got to really pay attention to, because if you're managing your money through multiple apps, instead of just using one, you can miss something. That's why Monarch Money is a great opportunity. So instead of juggling all of these different apps, you can use Monarch to check finances, track spending, and even plan your long-term future. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. What do you think Florida State's record will be in 2025? As I stated today, and I've stated previously, I'm going with 7-5. Secondarily to that question, kind of a point two to this, do you think 7-5 would be good enough to make some of the people at the Big 10, as well as the SEC, think, okay, they're trending in the right direction? Now, I know part of this is the eye test. How did you win the games? How did you look? How you were? I get that. But just the bare number, we'll get to all the fun stuff momentarily. I think 7-5 will do that. What do you think and why? Now, to that point of how it looks, Florida State football, when I was a kid, was probably about as exciting as it gets. The way Bobby Bowden called a game, the style of play they had, and just the athleticism on the field, it was unique. The brand was born. It was created with how Bowden and his staff did it. Great coaching, a lot of hustle on the recruiting trail, and guys grinding in the offseason to be the best they could. All culminated to make Florida State football one of the powers in the sport. With that being stated, Florida State really hit rock bottom this last year. There's no other way to say it. They were 2-10. That is fact. Can Florida State get to that 9-win plateau or better, preferably the latter, in 2026? If they can, my whole discussion for the first 20 minutes of this podcast starts to become much easier, and you can relax your shoulders and breathe a little bit easier. But Florida State, just from a football perspective now, just only talking football, no more basketball or anything else, it is really important that they start winning big again. You're not even going to come close to getting what you could get if Florida State was on the level of a top 10 team that it's been so often in the last 40 years. But you're not going to be there if you can't start winning. And it really, even if they do go 7-5 this year, you still set the building blocks for 26, 27, and beyond by being good. This spring practice, which begins this next week, is so vital. And that's why I want to do this podcast on Friday, the week before spring ball gets rolling. Florida State football has to get going. It must be cool again to be around Florida State football. It must be fun again for recruits to visit. It must be exciting again for people to tune in. Even if they don't like Florida State, they watch the games because it's Florida State. All of those things sell to the Big 10 and the SEC. Next question. Do you think that you would cut bait with Norvell in 2026? I don't think, unless they just completely bomb, I don't think there's hardly any chance he gets fired after this year with all the moves they just made. I'm going to throw that out there now. They'd have to go like 3-9. I highly doubt that's going to happen with the staff they just hired. But if they go 7-5 in 26, would you pull the plug? Because not only are you paying the coaching salary, and it would still be like $40 million they'd owe Mike alone, have to pay a new head coach, coaches out, coaches in. What record would it be that you needed to see from Florida State football for Norvell to keep his job from 26 to 27? Where does he got to be? And if there are other parameters, comment down below. Is it a recruiting requirement? Do you want to see something specific offensively? Like, it's not that hard to get talent to Florida State. The garbage that we saw last year on offense has to go away. But to what level? How high should they be held accountable? Then finally here with that, all the off the field stuff, social media and everything, they do a great job. What else can they do? Do you have any expectations there? If you want to comment on it, fine. If not, that's cool too. Next, and this is the big one. What do you think Florida State's value would be in comparison? Let's say they're an 8-4 team in 27. They're good, but they're nothing special. compared to an 11-1 team going to the ACC title game and ranked number 5 in the country. Number 3, whatever. They're going to the playoff. How much more value would they have to the Big Ten or the ACC? I think it would be massive. And again, my goal here is not whether they make it into the Big Ten or the SEC. It's not at all. It's whether or not they get in and they're that top tier with the TV money. Because I am steadfast that they are going to be going to this in every league where the top teams, like, for example, Alabama in the Southeastern Conference, conservatively every week, they're probably top 4 in viewership, unless they're playing, one of those directional schools. If they're playing an SEC opponent, Alabama is going to make more people come to the TV set. Texas, Georgia, Florida, LSU. Those 5, and you throw Tennessee in there too, are probably a little bit different than most. Oklahoma would be another one that does pretty well, but that state's not quite as populated. Point is still the same. If Florida State can get to that level where they're back in the ACC race by no later than the middle, let's say the 27 season, it's going to go up for the chances to not only get into the Big Ten or SEC, you're going to have a bidding war to get you in. And maybe that also helps bring North Carolina or something like that. Maybe it's Clemson. I think Clemson's more likely to end up in the SEC. Culturally, I think they're going to be different. But that's my guess. I don't know enough about Clemson to go much further into it than that. Point is still overall the same, though, here. Florida State, they've got to maximize in so many ways. The boosters, the fans, everybody's got to be ready to make Florida State football and all athletics top tier over the next 3 years to get the heck out of this conference and for this to be the end of the road for not being respected financially, for one, and overall as an institution and its athletic department the way that it can be. You got to help yourself first before somebody else is going to help you. And that's what I'm talking about. So anyway, please like, please subscribe, please share this podcast and talk about it with your friends. I'm curious if some of the questions that I asked, some of the points I made today, start a conversation with somebody today. Ask them, say, hey, what do you think about this Brian Smith guy talking about this with Florida State? You think this really matters? Ask him. I'm not afraid of criticism. Leave a comment down below. We will see you again soon here on Locked On Seminoles.